right, well, welcome back. This is the second video in Zачем менять? Why change? All right, well, I want to take you back to my students. Okay, this is Dima and Misha down in the center there. And there were two of my, I believe, ninth graders in this picture. So freshmen in high school when I was their teacher in Yakutat. And I specifically remember the question, why? Why do I have to know this? I was their teacher for 4 or 5 subjects. They were great kids. Okay. But to this day, I know they live in Yakutat and they fish and they've got all kinds of practical skills, but I'm not sure that, what I taught them, what I put into their brain, which was things like, the quadratic formula, Newton's laws, or the structure of a sugar molecule, that it was that useful. But they took my test. They're good kids. They did what they needed to do. So the question is really, what can you do with it? Why do you need this? And why should it change your teaching? And I don't have to go back to David St. George and the flight, but obviously, I believe pretty passionately, skills and concepts are really what teaching is about. Facts, I've got Google. I can get them from there. Okay. But there's a little bit of brain research too that kind of talks about, even if you want the kids to remember the facts, if that's your primary goal, well, then we need to change how we're teaching. We need to do something different because we have this vision of the brain as this great filing cabinet that we organize things. We just have to fit it in there. At least that was my thinking. Okay. Well, in reality, our brains look a lot like my daughter's bedroom. My daughter's Sasha. And yeah, take a picture of her bedroom. Yeah, this is your brain. It's just this mess of information organized. And if I'm going to find something, I've got to connect it to something else. It's all about the connections in our brain that helps us remember and organize. We've got to create structures, and it's what we do with it. It's what talking and discussion and all those pieces are about. Okay? Because we remember, and this is some data here, I'll translate it into English, about 10% of what we read and about 20% of what we hear. If I'm just lecturing to you like I'm doing now, 90% of it's gone. That's pretty frustrating for an online presenter, by the way. Doesn't bode real well for your capturing and keeping this information. Okay? About 30% of what we see and about 50% of what we see and hear, so at least hopefully slides are helping. Okay? But then if we move on, it's 70% of what we discuss with friends, which is why we're trying to have some online discussion of this. 80% of what I privately experience, I do something with, and 90% of what I teach to somebody. So I'm learning this stuff really well right now. But I need to give you some experiences of the same thing with your students, and you probably experience that. The things I know best are the things I've taught the most. Okay, that's how our brain works. I remember those things. Okay. And so if you ever know John Hattie and visible learning, he's got some really interesting data that relates to our teaching of science as well, and it's part of what STEM is about. And it's this idea, if we look at the relationship of teaching strategies and elements of teaching to student learning, okay, well, connecting to prior knowledge, that 0.93 says that's the number one strategy. Transfer strategies, how do we use something in one place and another? Oh, the cross-cutting concepts. Discussion, deliberate practice, evaluating and reflection. Those are all things we want to have in our teaching that go so beyond facts. The other thing I want to point out is go down to the bottom. These are things that interfere. That's what a negative score means. Okay? And notice, depression is an awful thing. But it doesn't truly interfere with learning. We know that. That's why we focus on social emotional learning. Boredom has a higher negative impact than depression. Bore our kids, and we might as well just write off the learning. And I know I did that early on, especially when I chose to lecture and just focus on facts. There wasn't a lot of interest there. So again, these are some of the reasons why I'm such a proponent for changing my teaching and why I hope you'll consider it. Okay? Because as they know, the one that's doing the talking is the one that's doing the learning. And so we got to get our kids talking, collaborating, doing if we want them to learn that, so that in that mess of my daughter's brain, that's her bedroom, things get organized, stratified, and can be pulled back when we want them. All right, which gets us back to the core ideas. Okay, so I hope this was useful. I hope you're even more inspired to learn about STEM and look forward to sharing with you a little more.